Hello and very welcome to my podcast in English. This is episode number 6 and I'm recording on the 17th of May 2018. And today is the Norwegian Constitution Day, so if there are any Norwegians out there watching this, please know that I'm thinking of you today. The podcast might not be up for 1 or 2 days more, but still, it's your national day today. If you don't already know me, my name is Annette Petavy, and today we're going to talk about my ongoing 100-day project. And it's been a very long time since the last episode. It was in November, so it's 6 months ago. Things have been a bit crazy for the past few months. I've changed a lot of things in the way I work. Everything has been more or less up in the air, and I was wondering where the pieces would fall down. Now they are falling down. I'm putting them into place. The dust is settling and I know a bit better where I'm heading, and I'm definitely heading towards more content in English. So if you can stand my accent, look forward to more podcasts, and in any case no more 6-month breaks. I cannot commit to a regular schedule, that's for sure, but no, not 6 months between podcasts. That's too much. So if you want to follow me elsewhere than on YouTube, where you can see me every 6 months, you can follow me. I'm still Annette Petavy everywhere, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, though I'm not there very much. I have a website at annettepetavy.com. If you type that into Google and follow the first link, you will most probably come to my web shop in French, but there is now on the menu on the right hand, you have quite a large items that says in English, simply click here, and then you come to my English web shop. Which is and has been for some time undergoing renovation. Well, I can come back to that at a later moment when I have gotten a bit further on this project, which is stalling. But well, I'm going to work on that. I also have a Ravelry group. I have a blog which used to be bilingual, and now it is mainly in French, almost exclusively in French. And I have a very neglected Ravelry group, but I hope to use that for some more written communication in English. So look out for that. And what I do have, and that works quite well, is my monthly newsletter. So if you want to receive monthly in-depth tutorials on crochet, you can subscribe. So all the links to my social media and to subscribe to the newsletter and everything else is linked here below the video. And don't hesitate to subscribe to this YouTube channel as well. So I want to talk about the 100-day project and what I'm doing within that. So the 100-day project, it's not that hard to say, but well, I didn't say in the introduction, I'm Swedish, living in France, so English is my third language, so please be patient. So my 100-day project. The 100-day project is a creative project. It's a kind of, let's say, Instagram challenge. I will link to the website about the project below the video as well. And the idea is to do something relatively small but consistently for every day during 100 days. So there are people who cook and document the recipes. I've been cooking every day for much more than 100 days, so that's not my thing. There are people who do yoga. It's a project that many illustrators choose to follow, and you have some really, really nice things going on Instagram there. You can follow the hashtag, the 100 Day Project, of course. What I'm doing within the framework of the 100 Day Project is 100 days of crochet swatches. That doesn't mean 100 crochet swatches because some days are extremely busy and sometimes it's just a matter of 1 or 2 rows. I have also fallen a bit behind because on some days I haven't done it. First, I tried to catch up, and now I think I will not try that hard, at least, to catch up some days. I might post 2 swatches on some days, but I think my 100-day project will simply last a little bit beyond the official date, which is perhaps the 8th of July or something like that. I don't quite remember. But the idea is not really to keep up with the challenge as such. The idea is to create this habit of doing something very regularly, preferably every day. And well, I'm doing crochet swatches. Okay, here we go again. 100 days of crochet swatches. Which swatches? Where do I start? I've given myself complete freedom, so this is not something that is very strongly outlined, but I knew that I wanted to work mainly on post stitches. I did a series last year in my newsletter about post stitches, and it's something that I wanted to really go further with. So I have been swatching stitch patterns, a lot of stitch patterns that sort of have come from this book. It is called, oh, it's very shiny. It's called 99 Crochets Post Stitches. It's from the publishing company Leisure Arts, and it's written by Darla Sims. I don't know much about Darla Sims. There's very little information about her, at least that's easily found on the internet. But she seems to be a very prolific crochet designer and author, and I have since purchased other books by her. So this is a book. It has no charts. It's written instructions like this, and there is a photo of each stitch pattern, and the photos are not super impressive. They're not bad photos, I mean, they're not horrible or anything, but I think for almost all the swatches I made, the pattern was more interesting than the photo would have led me to do. It's very hard to photograph stitch dictionaries. I would never try, so don't be put off by that. But if you don't read written crochet instructions and you rely on charts, this is not a book for you. It's an American book, so it uses US abbreviations, which is what I use mostly as well. So that works well for me. And so why did I choose to work mainly? I have done other things too within this project, but mainly I've used and am using, because the project is ongoing, this book. Well, first of all, I was not going to invent from scratch 100 stitch patterns. in crochet as well as in knitting. We are standing on the shoulders of giants. We are building on what previous generations and other people have done before us. And even if I have in the past, and I will certainly do that again, for some of my designs, I have created stitch patterns from scratch. I'm thinking about the Stole Circle and the Charlotte Euphorbia. This takes a lot of time, a lot of swatching, it's a lot of work. So it's not at all suitable for a project like this. And something that I think is very interesting is to take an existing stitch pattern and build on it and develop it and see what I can do with its potential and with its limits. And I knew I wanted to work on post stitches because, as I said last year, I did a series in my newsletter on post stitches. And let's say that many patterns I have worked in post stitches are not really adapted to the kind of crochet I do. Crochet has so many different applications, and many of the stitch patterns with post stitches I have tried are quite rigid, are quite thick, and are super useful if you want to make a bag, if you want to make a pot holder, if you want to make an afghan or blanket, however you choose to call it. Not so much for a shawl or anything else that you want to give drape and softness and create a more airy fabric. So sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try out a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try out a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try out a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So, sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So, sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So, sorry about that interruption. The phone rang. So what I wanted to research in some way with this project was, well, of course, to try a lot of different stitch pattern using post stitches, but also to see how I could work to create drapey fabric incorporating the fabulous texture of post stitches. So I thought I would simply show you a few of the swatches I made so far in this project. I'm going to film them from above on the table, so the light and the sound may change a bit. I hope that's okay, because this way you will be able to see the swatches much better than if I try to hold them up in front of the camera. So let's have a look at the swatches here on my kitchen tables. The colors are a bit off, but I think you can see them anyhow. So this is one of the first ones I made. As you can see, I haven't woven in the ends. I've just given the swatches a quick steaming before recording this video, because, you know, this is just something to do in a few minutes per day. So weaving in ends would be to push perfectionism too far, I think. So the stitch pattern I started with is the one at the bottom. It comes directly from the book, and I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a great texture. And then I wanted to add some color to this texture, so I started with 2 contrasting colors. And then I added a third one, and since this is a stitch pattern where the rows work 2 by 2, well, then of course when I'm working with 3 colors, the colors are a bit offset from one repeat to the other. And in this one, I think I enjoy most, well, the original version and the 2 color one, because I think the 3 color one is a bit too busy. But I still think it's very interesting to see how you can change the impression of one same stitch pattern by adding color to it. It's something I really enjoy doing, to see the effect. And the next swatch I wanted to show you is, let's just pull away the ends, it's this one. So it's a fairly standard, this one is also directly from the book, it's a fairly standard shell pattern with an open base. And what I find so interesting in this one and in other stitch patterns as well, and what I've really discovered while working on this project, is the effect, the very interesting effect you can get by inserting some well-placed post single crochet, so double crochet in UK terms. So this is a very small stitch, so it doesn't seem it would add that much texture, but it really makes the shells pop here. It's something to experiment more with, I think. It's not very hard. It's not a huge change to a stitch pattern, but it can have some really interesting effects. Sorry. And then there's this one. So here, actually these are two versions of the same stitch pattern. Here in these two repeats, it's worked exactly as stated in the book, and here I have introduced a minor change. And when you see it flat like this after blocking, it's not very impressed. The difference isn't very spectacular. But actually, in this book, what I've noted, and I find a bit, well, I find it interesting, but I wouldn't work that way, is that the author uses, how can I say this? In a stitch pattern based on US double crochets, she will use post double crochets, front post or back post, doesn't really matter, as if they were equivalent in height to a normal double crochet. But since you work a post stitch further down in the fabric, around the post of the stitch in the row below, this isn't really true. So here actually I worked it all in US double crochet as stated in the book, and here I on one of the rows in the repeat, on one of the post stitches on one row is not, well, on all of one row I've changed a post double crochet to a post treble, and the result is not so easy to see when it lies flat like this, but there's less tension in the fabric and it tends to lie better even before blocking, while still retaining, of course, the very nice texture. I really like this one, by the way. I think I want to make something with that. And this is something that I think you can see more clearly in this next example. So let's see if the camera can focus. It's a bit dark, but let's try to have a look at this anyhow. Perhaps you can tilt your screen in a way or the other to make it a bit lighter. Here we have columns of post stitches here and here, alternating with columns of shells. And I think this is very interesting, but the difficulty of the different stitch heights is very clear in this swatch. And well, because you can see there is a big difference. It's the same number of rows worked of the shell column and over the DC column, which is entirely worked in post stitches on both sides of the fabric. And this, I made a very small swatch, but it was rather clear that this difference was more and more accentuated the more I worked. And also, of course, it's a rather thick fabric. But this was a problem to me, because if I'm to use this stitch pattern in a design, I'm not sure it would be very easy to handle this difference in heights. So I kept the basic idea and changed things up a bit. Let's take away the ends from the back of the swatch. So here we have the same DC columns and shell columns, but I worked post stitches only on every second row in the DC columns. And while there's still a slight difference, of course, here between the shells and the DC columns, this difference didn't evolve when I was working the stitch pattern, so it's about static as is. And it could, if I would want to insert this with something else coming after this stitch pattern, it would be easily compensated here. And the start of the swatch is more or less a straight line. Of course, we've lost some of the texture, but I think there's something quite interesting going on here, where you see these wavy lines, where actually the texture of the post stitches blend into the base of the shells, and I think it's quite interesting. And to me, it's much easier to use this than the previous swatch. I also wanted to show you an example. It's the same color, so perhaps a little dark, but I think you can see anyhow, especially against the white background. So from the bottom of the swatch up till here, it's a very nice stitch taken directly from the book. But when I was working it, I thought I could lighten this up a little. And if you look carefully here, this part of the swatch, I don't know if it shows better if I lift it up a little bit like this, but there is more space in the upper half of the swatch. And this is because I've replaced some, well, in each motif it's 2 DCs, so US DCs, that I've skipped. I've replaced them with chain spaces instead. They were not vital to the design, because you still can see the gull wings here, I think, just as well as here. But this part is lighter drapier and more supple. This part is really nice too. It really depends if you want to have a great contrast between the openings in between the post stitch columns and the post stitch columns themselves. But personally, I think this has quite some potential. In any case, it's a lovely stitch pattern. And then I have just turn over the page in my notes so I remember what I wanted to see. Then there's this one. This one comes directly from the book, and it's not. I'm showing you the wrong way around. So, like this. This is texture patterns. That's really funny. It's full of textures. It's constructed in a quite specific way. There's no way I would have come up with this on my own, I think. I loved it. It has lots of likes on Instagram, but I also saw quite a few limitations for this one. If I were to work it into a complete design. And I made several versions or developments of this one. I'm just going to show you one. And who knows, I might not have finished with this one yet. So here I've broken up, let me put this here so we can see them together. I've broken up this stitch pattern by inserting these columns with chain spaces and a sort of daisy spine growing up here. So, so you lose some of the playfulness in this one, I'd say, because this is more orderly and more in a straight line. But it adds, of course, it adds space. It has negative space, so it has holes. This will give the stitch pattern more drape. And also, as a designer, I can more easily see how I could work increases and decreases, etc., by using this simple DC column flanked by chain spaces, than trying to modify these shells in some way. And just one more, a quite recent one in two colors. And this I really love too. It really shows the potential of working with post stitches when you work in two colors, since you can use the post stitches very easily to break up the rows below and create interesting effects. There's lots and lots more to do with this particular feature of two color stripes broken up, and well, here I missed one, so you can see that quite clearly, because these vertical lines not only give texture but also so much more visual interest than a normal stripe would have. So you've seen a selection of my swatches so far. As I said, this is a still ongoing project. So if you want to follow along, you can follow me on Instagram, where I'm Annette Petavy. I also share this post on Facebook, but they are shared to my Facebook page, which is called Annette Petavy Design. This page has a lot of content in French. And perhaps if you are, I think most of my English-speaking Facebook friends are following my personal account, but my Instagram photos are shared to the page. So if you want to follow this on Facebook, you can follow my page and indicate that you want to see the posts from this page first in your stream, because otherwise you will never see them, because I don't pay Facebook to show them to you, and the Facebook algorithm works that way. If you have a page and people don't check the box to see it first, or check that they want to have notifications, they never see them. That's the way Facebook works. So what has this project done for me so far? Why is it interesting to do a project like this, like the 100-day project? And why would you like to do one? You can do it anytime you want, of course. It doesn't have to be during the dates of the official 100-day project. I'm in a phase right now where I am trying to work a bit differently. This is also why things have been a bit crazy, and while I'm trying out different things, and I have been absent for quite some while. And one of the ways ahead for me is to work more actively in designing and in teaching. So these are both very creative pursuits, and to me creativity is always connected to play. Of course, I mean, you have to have some discipline to be creative, you have to sit down and do the work, but there must be an element of play and fun. And this definitely is play and fun. I sit down, I pick up the book, I pick up a hook, I pick up some yarn, and I start swatching without any pressure whatsoever, because I'm starting by swatching from an existing stitch pattern. And then, of course, the ideas come. So that's very interesting and very enjoyable. And really, the best thing about this is that I'm back where I was about, well, now it's more than 15 years ago, when I fell head over heels in love with crochet, when I spent time playing with stitch patterns, with colors, just for the pleasure of doing it. And I must really say that so far this 100-day project has allowed me to fall passionately in love with crochet again. I love crochet all the time. I work with it. I think it's a fantastic technique. But this special time in the day, which is reserved for playing with crochet stitches, is very valuable. So perhaps you want to do a 100-day project too, or perhaps I have inspired you to go swatch up some crochet patterns. I can only hope so. I'm going to wrap up, but just to say what I'm wearing today is my wave design. It's an asymmetrical triangle in crochet. The version I'm wearing is worked in my fingering weight merino yarn that has been custom dyed by a dyeing friend. And on the mannequin, it's the same pattern, but in commercially made cotton, organic cotton yarn that I also sell on my website. Thank you for listening, and if you had waited for 6 months for me to come back, thank you so much for your patience. I hope to talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.